The Galactic Council chamber stretched 500 meters high, a monument to the greatest civilizations in the known universe. Crystalline towers held the Varath representatives, their bodies reflecting light in patterns that served as language. The Themner floated in containment spheres, clouds of sentient gas that had mastered quantum physics before humanity learned to make fire. 47 species gathered here, each one convinced of their own superiority. Ambassador Jiwan sat in the human section, a modest platform near the back. She had been here for 6 hours, listening to debates about mining rights in the Kilo system. She raised her hand twice to speak. Both times, the chamber's attention protocol ignored her. The crystalline moderator's light patterns flowed past her signal as if it did not exist. She was used to it. 3 years as Earth's representative had taught her that humans were decoration in this place. They were allowed to attend, allowed to listen, but never truly heard. The galaxy's great powers had decided long ago that humanity was too young, too simple, too ordinary to matter. Far below the Grand Chamber, in the maintenance tunnels that kept the station alive, Deho wiped sweat from his forehead. The environmental regulator for Section 7 was failing again. He knelt beside the massive machine, listening to the rhythm of its cooling system. The manual said the pressure should be stable, but Deho heard something wrong in the hum. He pulled off an access panel and reached inside, his fingers finding a valve that was not in any schematic. Someone had installed it decades ago, probably another human engineer who understood that the design system had a flaw. Deho adjusted it carefully, feeling the vibration change under his touch. The rhythm smoothed out. The temperature reading stabilized. Fixed, he said to himself. No one would notice. No one would care. In 2 weeks, the same valve would need adjustment again, and Deho would return to fix it. This was his life. This was every human's life in the Galactic Union. Above him, the Council continued their debates. The Varath proposed new energy distribution protocols. The Kraliks, insectoid beings with perfect mathematical minds, calculated resource allocation down to the molecule. The Themner discussed philosophical implications of faster-than-light travel. Important matters. Grand matters. None of them knew that Section 7 had nearly failed. None of them knew that if it had, the entire western quarter of the station would have lost life support within an hour. None of them knew Deho existed. When the session finally ended, Jiwan returned to the human residential sector. It was small, clean, and quiet. Most humans working on the council station lived here, away from the grand towers where important species resided. She found Hinwu in the common room, surrounded by data screens. How was the session? Yanwu asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. I spoke 0 times, Jiwan said, sitting down heavily. Well, I tried twice. Does that count? Yanwu smiled, but there was sadness in it. He gestured to the screens around him. I have something to show you. The vote tallies are coming in. Jiwan leaned forward. For 6 months, every human colony, every human station, every human settlement had been voting on a single question. Should humanity withdraw from the Galactic Union? The numbers scrolled across the screens. New Sol Colony, 94% in favor. Earth, 89% in favor. Threshold Station, 97% in favor. On and on, hundreds of worlds, thousands of stations. The final count is 92%, Hyunwoo said quietly. Humanity wants to leave. Jiwan stared at the numbers. She thought about the 3 years she had spent trying to make Earth's voice heard. She thought about every human worker on this station, fixing problems no one acknowledged, solving crises no one noticed, keeping everything running while being treated as if they were invisible. When? She asked. The departure initiative activates in 6 months, Hyunwoo said. We've been preparing for 2 years. Ships are ready. Gate coordinates are locked. We just needed the vote to be official. Jiren walked to the viewport and looked out at the council chamber in the distance. It glowed with light, beautiful and proud. The greatest minds in the galaxy gathered there to shape the future. They never looked down at the tunnels below, where Daeho and thousands like him kept that future possible. Will we tell them? She asked. No, Hyunwoo said. We'll just leave, quietly, the way we do everything. That night, Daeho received a message on his personal screen. The departure initiative had been approved. In 6 months, every human would leave Galactic Union space. He could go home. He could stop fixing machines for species that never said thank you. He looked at the environmental regulator one more time. In 2 weeks, it would need adjustment again. But he would not be here. No human would be here. He wondered how long it would take before Section 7 failed completely. He wondered if anyone would notice before the alarm screamed. Probably not. Ji-won stood at the viewport for a long time that night, watching the council chamber shine against the stars. She had tried so hard to make them listen. She had believed that if humans just worked hard enough, proved themselves enough, contributed enough, eventually they would be seen as equals. She had been wrong. The galaxy did not want equals. It wanted servants it could ignore. 6 months, she whispered to her reflection in the glass. Then we're gone. Behind her, Hyunwoo began sending coded messages to every human settlement in the galaxy. The withdrawal was beginning. Humanity would slip away like smoke, and the galaxy would not notice until the fires went out. 6 months passed like a held breath. Across the galaxy, humans prepared to vanish. Minho stood in the agricultural dome on Varth Prime, looking at the fields he attended for 7 years. The purple grain swayed in the artificial breeze, a hybrid crop he had developed by combining Vorath native plants with earth wheat. The yield was 40% higher than pure Vorath grain. It fed 6 million Vorath every year. His Vorath supervisor, a crystalline being named Kelthros, approached with light patterns that translated as casual dismissal. Your contract ends today, human. The automated systems will handle the harvest. The automated systems don't know about the pH balance in Section 4, Minho said. Or the irrigation timing for the hybrid zones. Or the we will manage, Kelthros interrupted, his light patterns flickering with confidence. Your species has a tendency to overcomplicate simple processes. Minho nodded slowly. He had written a manual, detailing every adjustment, every trick, every small thing that kept the fields productive. He had left it in the station database. He doubted anyone would read it. The Vorath believed their technology was superior. They would learn. He picked up his single bag and walked to the transport platform. Behind him, Kelthros was already interfacing with the automated farming system, completely confident. Minho did not look back. On the Galactic Council station, Sunhee locked the door to her mediation office for the last time. For 3 years, she had resolved conflicts between species too proud to compromise. Trade disputes, border disagreements, cultural misunderstandings. She worked through hologram projections, her appearance masked by alien avatars. Most of the parties she helped never knew. A human was mediating. Her last case had been a territorial dispute between the Themner and the Kralliks. Both sides claimed a nebula rich in helium-3. Both sides were preparing weapons. Sunny had spent 40 hours in negotiation, finding a sharing arrangement that satisfied their honor while splitting the resources fairly. The agreement was signed yesterday. Both sides praised the wisdom of the Vorath mediator they thought they had been speaking with. Sunhee smiled at that memory as she deleted her files and wiped her systems. Let them handle their own disputes now. Let them see how long their pride lasted without someone quietly working to prevent wars. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Human doctors left hospitals. Human engineers abandoned maintenance schedules. Human farmers finished their contracts and departed. Human teachers, negotiators, technicians, and laborers all moved toward human space. Toward the sealed borders humanity had been quietly establishing at Threshold Station. Humanity's largest non-Earth installation, Hyunwoo oversaw the final evacuation. 30,000 humans lived here, working in research facilities, manufacturing centers, and administrative offices. The station had been humanity's gateway to the galaxy for 80 years. Now they were taking it apart. "Grandfather, why are we destroying the equipment?" Young Inji asked, watching his workers dismantled a medical fabricator worth millions of credits. "Couldn't we just leave it?" Her grandfather, a gray-haired engineer named Sang-hoon, shook his head. "They never valued what we gave freely. They won't appreciate what they take from our absence either. We leave them nothing they can use." The hydroponics bays were burned. The research data was encrypted and deleted. The fabrication facilities were reduced to scrap metal. Anything that could not be moved to human space was destroyed. It seemed wasteful, even cruel, but Hyunwoo understood. If they left the technology behind, the galaxy would simply replace humans with human tools, and nothing would change. Unji piloted one of the last shuttles away from Threshold Station. She was 19 years old, born on this station, and had never seen Earth. As her shuttle approached the transport ship, she watched demolition charges flower across the station's hull. Decades of human work vanished in silent explosions. "It's sad," she said. "It's necessary," her grandfather replied. "Sometimes you have to break something to prove it had value." The convoy of human ships gathered at the Kessler Threshold, the wormhole gate that connected human space to the larger galaxy. 300 vessels, carrying the last humans from Galactic Union territory. Ji-won stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the fleet assemble. Hyunwoo stood beside her. "All sectors report ready. Every human is accounted for. Any messages from the council?" Ji-won asked. "Nothing. They still don't know we're leaving." Ji-won almost laughed. Humanity had spent 6 months withdrawing from every corner of galactic civilization, and the great powers had not noticed. It was perfect proof of everything they had decided. Humanity was invisible to them, right up until the moment they vanished completely. "Begin transit," she ordered. One by one, the human ships passed through the Kessler Threshold. On the other side lay human space, 400 light-years from the galactic core, a region of stars the other species considered too remote and resource-poor to bother claiming. Humanity had spent a century building there, quietly, away from the galaxy's attention. The last ship passed through. Ji-won watched from the other side as Hyunwoo initiated the shutdown sequence. The Kessler Threshold was a human design, human-built, human-maintained. Now it powered down, its exotic matter fuel depleted, its connection severed. The route between human space and the galaxy was closed. "It's done," Hyunwoo said. Ji-won nodded. Somewhere in the galactic core, on the council station Daeho had maintained, systems would start to fail. On Varath Prime, Minho's carefully balanced crops would begin to wither. In meditation offices across Union space, conflicts would escalate without Sunhee and her colleagues to find peaceful solutions. The galaxy would learn what it meant to overlook humanity. It would take time. Maybe weeks, maybe months. But eventually, they would understand what they had lost, and humanity would be gone, watching from a distance, finally free. The first failures were small. On Varath Prime, the waste processing plant in the southern district overflowed. The automated systems had functioned perfectly for decades, but now sewage flooded into 3 city blocks. Kelthrus, the agricultural supervisor who had dismissed Minho, was assigned to investigate. He reviewed the maintenance logs. Everything appeared normal. The systems ran according to specifications. Yet the overflow continued. It took Kelthros 4 days to discover that the backup pumps had been manually adjusted every week by a human technician. The adjustments were not in any official protocol. They were based on seasonal variations in waste composition that the automated systems could not predict. Without those weekly corrections, the entire system had drifted out of balance. By the time Kelthros understood the problem, 6 city blocks were contaminated. The Vorath had to evacuate 40,000 citizens on the border between Themner and Kralik space. A minor trade dispute escalated into violence. A Themner merchant vessel fired on a Kralik's cargo hauler over a disagreement about docking fees. 3 Kraliks died. The Kraliks retaliated, destroying the Themner ship. 17 Themner perished. In the past, the conflict would have been contained within hours. Human mediators monitored all border regions, identifying problems early and proposing solutions before they escalated. Now, there were no mediators. The Vorath tried to intervene, but their approach was legalistic and rigid. The Themner felt insulted. The Kraliks felt dismissed. Within a week, both sides had positioned warships at the border. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Jiwan's replacement, a young Vorath diplomat named Cerethus, tried to explain the situation, but the council members interrupted each other, each convinced their own solution was superior. The meeting accomplished nothing. On the council station itself, Wanshik cursed in his native Vorath language. He stood in the maintenance tunnel where Deho had worked, staring at the environmental regulator for Section 7. The temperature had been rising for 3 days. The manual said the system should autocorrect, but it was not correcting. Wanshik had the technical blueprints. He had the maintenance procedures. He had studied engineering at the finest Vorath Academy. Yet when he tried to follow the instructions, nothing worked. The pressure readings made no sense. The cooling cycles were irregular. He discovered valves and bypasses that were not in any schematic, modifications made by human engineers over decades. Why did they not document these changes? Wanshik muttered. He did not understand that humans rarely worked from pure documentation. They improvised, adjusted, felt their way through problems using instinct and experience. They made machines work through understanding, not just following rules. Section 7's temperature continued to rise. Wanshik called for additional engineers. They tried everything they could think of. The temperature kept climbing. Finally, with no other options, they shut down Section 7 entirely. 3,000 station residents had to evacuate to other areas. The council chamber's western wing closed. For the first time in its history, the Galactic Council could not meet at full capacity. 8 months after humanity's departure, the problems were impossible to ignore. Agricultural yields dropped on 17 worlds where humans had worked. The hybrid crops they developed were failing without their careful maintenance. Medical facilities reported rising death rates. Human doctors and nurses had filled countless small roles that seemed unnecessary until they were gone. Transportation networks experienced delays. Humans had staffed scheduling and logistics positions across the galaxy, making tiny adjustments that kept everything flowing smoothly. Without them, ships arrived late, cargo was misrouted, and supply chains fractured. The Galactic Council met to address the crisis. The chamber was tense. Representatives from 47 species argued and blamed each other. Some insisted it was coincidence. Others claimed sabotage. A few very quietly suggested that perhaps humanity had been more important than anyone realized. The Vorath High Counselor, an ancient crystalline being named Voranthal, finally called for silence. His light patterns filled the chamber with authority. We must face the truth. Our analysis shows a clear pattern. Systems maintained by humans are failing. Positions staffed by humans are vacant. Their absence is not coincidence. The Themner representative, a swirling cloud of purple gas named Themrak, pulsed with irritation. Impossible. Humans were laborers, nothing more. We are the great civilizations. We will adapt. We will hire other species. We never needed them. Then explain the medical data, Varnthal said coldly. He displayed statistics across the chamber screens. Mortality rates were up 9% across all Union hospitals. Human medical staff comprised 14% of our healthcare workers, yet their absence accounts for most of this increase. How? A Kralik scientist, a being of pure logic named Kresh, provided the answer. Humans were generalists. They could perform multiple roles. They adapted to unexpected situations. Our species optimized ourselves for specific tasks. A Varath surgeon is superior to a human in surgery, but only in surgery. A human doctor could perform surgery, diagnose illnesses, comfort patients, and adjust treatment plans based on intuition. We eliminated intuition from our practice as inefficient. Humans retained it. The chamber fell silent. The implications were uncomfortable. The great civilizations had spent millennia eliminating flexibility, optimizing for perfection in narrow domains. Humans, young and unspecialized, had remained adaptable. That adaptability had filled 10,000 gaps the advanced species did not even know existed. We maintained 40% of the cross-species medical database, Varnthal continued, reading from reports. Humans managed waste reclamation on 89 major stations. They staffed conflict mediation offices on every contested border. They performed routine maintenance that kept our infrastructure functional. They grew our food, educated our children in multi-species schools, and solved problems we never noticed were problems. Themrak swirled angrily. We will simply assign these tasks to others. This is temporary disruption. But it was not temporary. A supply ship carrying critical medicine to a Kralik's colony failed to arrive. The human navigation crew had maintained the ship's systems through experience and intuition, making constant tiny corrections that kept everything working. The replacement crew followed procedures exactly, and the ship's navigation system failed in deep space. 300,000. Kralik's hatchlings needed the medicine on that ship. It arrived 4 weeks late. By then, all 300,000 were dead. The galaxy began to understand. Humanity had not been servants. They had been the foundation. The flexible, adaptable, overlooked foundation that held everything else together. And now that foundation was gone. 18 months after humanity departed, the Galactic Union was dying. The Council dispatched envoys to the Kessler Threshold, the sealed gate that led to human space. 3 Vorath diplomats approached in a sleek vessel, carrying demands that humanity return and resume their duties. They were careful to phrase it diplomatically, but the meaning was clear. The galaxy needed its servants back. The gate did not respond to their hails. The envoys tried standard activation protocols. Nothing. They attempted to override the controls, believing that Vorath technology could unseal any human-made system. The gate exploded. The blast was not large enough to destroy the Vorath ship, but it vaporized the gate itself and sent a clear message. Humanity had anticipated this moment. They had built the gate to self-destruct if anyone tried to force entry. Decades of careful engineering, erased in an instant to prevent exactly this kind of arrogance. The envoys returned to the Council with nothing but failure and a recording of the explosion. The message was obvious. Humanity would not be summoned like servants. They would not be commanded. They were done. In a laboratory on Vorath Prime, a scientist named Taijin struggled with a human medical procedure. He had all the documentation, every step carefully written down by the human doctors who had left. The procedure was for treating Vorath cellular decay, a disease that affected 3% of the Vorath population. Taijin followed the instructions exactly. He prepared the cellular cultures, applied the enzyme treatments, monitored the reactions. Every step matched the protocol. Yet his patients died at twice the rate the humans had achieved. He ran the procedure 100 times, each time following the documentation precisely. The results were consistently worse than what the humans had accomplished. Taijin could not understand why. Finally, in desperation, he reviewed old security footage of Dr. Nari, a human physician who had worked in his facility. He watched her perform the same procedure. At first, everything looked identical to what he was doing. Then he noticed the small differences. Nari adjusted the enzyme mixture based on the patient's age, something not mentioned in the protocol. She modified the temperature slightly depending on the season, compensating for atmospheric variations. She spent time talking to patients, gathering information about their symptoms that informed her approach. She made dozens of tiny decisions that the protocol never mentioned, decisions based on experience and intuition rather than documentation. She was not following the procedure, Taijin realized in horror. She was adapting it. Every single time. The protocol was a guide, not a formula. Humans treated it as a starting point and adjusted based on the specific situation. They used judgment, instinct, senses that the Vorath had long since engineered away in favor of pure logic. Taijin could follow the steps, but he could not replicate the understanding that made those steps work. The Galactic Council assembled its greatest minds to study the problem. They watched footage of Deho maintaining the environmental systems, frame by frame. They analyzed his movements, his decisions, his methods. "He is not following the manual," observed Crash, the Kralik scientist. "Look here. The manual says to check valve pressure with the sensor." Deho touches the pipe with his hand. He is using physical sensation to detect vibration patterns. "And here," added a Themner researcher, "he adjusts the coolant flow by listening to the pump." There is no mention of acoustic analysis in the maintenance protocol. They watched Deho work for hours on the recordings. He used his hands, his ears, even his sense of smell to diagnose problems. He improvised solutions based on partial information. He made intuitive leaps that no logical analysis would support, yet his repairs worked. "Humans retained their primitive senses," Borenthal said slowly, his light patterns dim with realization. "We saw this as a weakness. We optimized ourselves beyond such crude inputs. But those senses gave them information we can no longer perceive." The room fell silent as the implications settled. The advanced species had perfected themselves into brittleness. They could perform their specialized tasks flawlessly, but only their specialized tasks. Humans, unspecialized and adaptable, could do anything adequately and adjust to anything unexpected. The Kralik's Hive Queen, Krishala, spoke through her diplomat. She was ancient and wise, and her words carried weight. We dismissed them because they were unspecialized. We failed to understand that flexibility was their specialization. They could do everything adequately. We can do one thing perfectly, but nothing else. The truth spread through the council like poison. Their entire civilization was optimized for efficiency, every species filling a narrow role. The Vorath designed technology. The Kraliks performed calculations. The Themner theorized about grand concepts. It worked beautifully as long as every piece stayed in its place. Humans have been the piece that adapted to fill the gaps. When a Vorath design failed in unexpected ways, humans figured out how to make it work anyway. When Kralik's calculations missed human factors, humans provided the intuition. When species clashed, humans mediated because they could understand multiple perspectives. Without humans, the system was collapsing. Famine spread across 17 worlds. The hybrid crops failed, and no one could recreate the agricultural techniques that had sustained them. Conflicts erupted along a dozen borders. minor disputes escalating into violence without mediators to intervene early. Infrastructure crumbled as maintenance failures cascaded through networks no one fully understood. The Thumna and Kralix were now in open warfare over the Helium-3 nebula. The agreement Sun-Hee had negotiated held for exactly 4 months after her departure. Then a misunderstanding escalated, and without a mediator both sides trusted, diplomacy failed. Thousands died in the fighting. On the Council Station, Section 7's failure had spread to Sections 8 and 9. A third of the station was uninhabitable. The evacuation of residents had created housing shortages and social tensions. Fights broke out between species forced to live in cramped quarters together. Varenthal stood in the council chamber, looking at the empty seats. Several species had stopped sending representatives. The Union was fragmenting. "We were so proud," he said to the empty room. "We believed our advancement made us superior. We never saw that our advancement made us fragile." A message came from human space. It was not directed to the council, but broadcast on all frequencies where anyone could hear it. The voice was G1's, calm and final. "You never asked us to stay. You never asked us for anything except our labor, and you never thanked us for providing it. We tried to be partners. You made us invisible. Now we are done asking you for recognition. We are done waiting to be seen. Goodbye." The message ended. No contact information, no negotiation offer, nothing. Humanity had spoken its last word to the galaxy. The great civilizations of the Galactic Union faced a choice: adapt or die. But adaptation was what they had engineered out of themselves, and the only species who could teach them was gone. 3 years after humanity departed, the Galactic Union was a shadow of itself. The Varath and Demner were engaged in a bitter conflict over resource distribution, each blaming the other for the shortages affecting both species. The Kralix had withdrawn into isolation after losing millions to famine and medical failures. 17 species faced extinction-level crises. The great trade networks that had connected thousands of worlds had collapsed into regional clusters barely holding together. The council chamber stood half empty. Many species could no longer afford to send representatives. The station itself was falling apart, with entire sections sealed off due to life support failures no one could repair. Varenthal stood alone in the chamber, his crystalline form dimmer than it had been 3 years ago. The stress of watching civilization crumble had taken its toll even on his ancient structure. He was reviewing casualty reports when the proximity alarm sounded. A ship had appeared at the edge of sensor range. A human ship. Varenthal immediately sent word to every remaining council member. Within an hour, they had assembled, the largest gathering in months. They watched the view screens as the human vessel approached. It was small, a diplomatic craft, and it came alone. The ship docked. A single figure emerged. Ambassador Jiwan walked through the corridors of the council station, noting the darkness where lights had failed, the cold where heating had broken, the smell of recycling systems that were not functioning properly. She had walked these halls for 3 years, trying to make humanity's voice heard. Now she walked them as a representative of a power the galaxy had finally learned to respect. The council chamber doors opened for her. Every eye, sensor, and awareness focused on this single human as she walked to the central platform. She stood where she had once sat in the back, ignored and dismissed. "I am Ambassador Jiwan, speaking for humanity," she said. Her voice was steady, calm, and carried clearly through the vast space. "We have watched the Union's decline. We have seen the suffering, and we have come with an offer." Vorenthal's light patterns flickered with desperate hope. "Will humanity return?" "Yes," Jiwan said. "But not as we were before." She activated a holographic display. It showed the terms of humanity's proposal. medical aid to stabilize the health crises, agricultural experts to restore food production, engineers to repair critical infrastructure, mediators to resolve conflicts. Everything the galaxy desperately needed. But these are our conditions, Ji-Wan continued. Equal representation in the council. Fair compensation for all work performed. Acknowledgement of contribution in all official records. And most importantly, respect. Demrak, the Demner representative, swirled with agitation. You would extort us in our moment of weakness? No, Ji-Wan said firmly. We are offering help when you need it most. But we will not return to invisibility. We will not be taken for granted again. Either we are partners, or we remain separate. An older human man stepped forward from behind Ji-Wan. Hyun-woo looked tired, his hair now completely white, but his eyes were sharp. You asked why we would help at all after how you treated us. I will tell you, because that is what we do. We adapt, we build, we fix what is broken, even when those we help do not appreciate it. He paused, looking around at the assembled species. But we also learn. We learn that giving without limit leads to being taken for granted. We learn that working in the shadows means never being seen. We will help you, because leaving you to collapse would be cruel. But we will not be invisible again. The council members conferred among themselves. Some argued against the terms, clinging to old pride. Others, looking at the casualty reports and the infrastructure failures, saw no choice. The debate lasted for hours. Finally, Laurentol spoke for the consensus. We accept your terms. Equal partners. Fair compensation. Respect. His light patterns dimmed with something that might have been shame. We should have offered these things freely, years ago. We were blind. Yes, Ji-Wan said simply. You were. Within days, human ships began arriving through a newly opened gate. Not the Kessler threshold. Humanity had built an entire network of gates during their isolation, cutting the galaxy out while they developed their own infrastructure. Now they opened a single controlled route, allowing aid to flow. Medical teams led by Dr. Nari returned to treat the sick. She worked alongside Taijin, teaching him not just the procedures, but the intuition behind them. Medicine is not just following steps, she explained. It is listening to the patient, adapting to circumstances, trusting your experience even when the manual does not cover it. Agricultural specialists like Minho returned to the fields. He showed Kelthros the adjustments needed for the hybrid crops. But more importantly, he taught the Vorath supervisor to observe, to notice the small signs that indicated problems before they became failures. Engineers like Daeho returned to the maintenance tunnels. Wanchik worked beside him, learning to diagnose by sound and touch instead of just by sensors. Your tools are excellent, Daeho said, but sometimes your own senses tell you things your tools miss. Mediators like Sunhee took up their positions at conflict zones. She worked openly now, her human face visible in all negotiations. She helped the Demner and Kralix find a new agreement for the nebula, one that addressed the deeper issues their pride had prevented them from discussing before. Young Captain Junji, now 22, oversaw the reopening of Threshold Station. The new station bore a name in both human and galactic languages, the price of overlooking. It was a memorial and a warning, a reminder of what happened when essential work was taken for granted. The reconstruction took years. The galaxy did not heal overnight, but slowly, steadily, with human flexibility filling the gaps between specialized brilliance, civilization began to recover. The council sessions changed. Ji-Wan now spoke from a central platform, and when she spoke, everyone listened. Humans held seats equal to any other species. Their contributions were recorded, acknowledged, and compensated fairly. One day, Varnthal approached Ji-Wan privately. I have studied our history, he said. We made first contact with humanity 147 years ago. In all that time, we never truly saw you. I do not understand how we were so blind. Jiwan considered his words. You saw what you expected to see. We were young, unspecialized, still using our primitive senses. You assumed that made us inferior. You never considered that those traits might be strengths. Sophistication without flexibility is fragility, Varenthal said, repeating a phrase that had become common wisdom in the years since humanity's return. Specialization without adaptability is vulnerability. These are lessons written in the deaths of millions. Expensive lessons. Yes, Jiwan agreed. But you learned them. That matters. She looked out at the rebuilt station, at the humans and aliens working side by side, visible and valued. We did not want to leave. We wanted to belong. When that became impossible, we chose dignity over acceptance. We chose to be somewhere we could be seen, even if it meant being alone. And then you came back, Varenthal said. We came back because you finally saw us, Jiwan corrected. Not as servants, not as invisible workers, but as partners, as equals. That was worth returning for. Hyunwoo joined them at the viewport. He was old now, his time running short, but he had lived to see humanity recognized. The galaxy learned an important truth, he said. The smallest species, the most flexible, the most adaptable, can be the most essential. Not through conquest or dominance, but through being what others cannot be. Below them, in the maintenance tunnels, Daeho adjusted an environmental regulator. This time, Wanshik worked alongside him, learning to hear the rhythms of the machine. In the agricultural domes, Minho taught a new generation of Warth farmers how to feel the soil and read the plants. In meditation offices, Sumhi showed Demner and Krallick's diplomats how to find common ground. Humanity did not conquer the galaxy. They did not need to. They simply showed what happened when the Overlook departed, and then offered one more chance. The galaxy took it. And this time, they saw clearly what they had almost lost forever, the adaptable foundation that made everything else possible.